My phone buzzed at exactly 6:47 inches the morning. I remember the time because I was sitting at my kitchen table in my house in Maple Ridge, Minnesota, drinking my second cup of coffee and watching the snow fall gently outside the window. At 72 years old, I had learned to appreciate these quiet moments. The text was from my attorney, Frank Morrison. We had known each other for over 30 years. He handled my wife's estate when she passed, helped me set up my retirement accounts, and even came to my grandson's baptism. Frank wasn't the type to send dramatic messages. But this one read, "Walter, call me the moment you see this. Do not talk to anyone until we speak. This is urgent." My heart dropped into my stomach. I immediately thought something had happened to one of my grandchildren. Or maybe there was a problem with my investments. At my age, your mind goes to dark places quickly. I dialed his number with trembling fingers. "Walter, thank God," Frank said. He sounded like he hadn't slept. "Are you alone right now?" "Yes, I'm at home. What's going on? You're scaring me. I need you to listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear, but you need to know the truth about what your son has been planning." My son, Michael, my only child, the boy I had raised single-handedly after his mother died when he was just 12 years old. The man I had given everything to. "What about Michael?" I asked, though part of me already sensed that whatever came next would change my life forever. Frank took a deep breath. "Yesterday, a colleague of mine received a petition. It's a request for emergency guardianship over you, Walter. The petition claims you're suffering from severe cognitive decline and that you're no longer capable of managing your own affairs." It was filed by Michael and his wife, Denise. The coffee cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. I didn't even notice. Let me tell you something about myself. I spent 43 years as a cardiovascular surgeon at Mayo Clinic. I performed over 4,000 heart surgeries. I published 37 papers in medical journals. I trained residents who are now department heads at hospitals across the country. When I retired 8 years ago, my colleagues threw me a party and called me one of the finest surgical minds of my generation. And now my own son was trying to convince a court that I couldn't manage my checkbook. "Walter, are you still there?" Frank's voice cut through my shock. "I'm here," I managed to say. "Tell me everything." Over the next hour, Frank laid out what he had discovered. The petition was filed 3 days ago in Hennepin County. It claimed that I had been showing signs of dementia for the past 2 years. It alleged that I had made several irrational financial decisions and that I was vulnerable to exploitation. The petition requested that Michael be appointed as my guardian with full control over my medical decisions, my living situation, and most importantly, my finances. My finances. That's what this was really about. You see, I'm not a poor man. After 4 decades as a surgeon and careful investing, I had accumulated around $6 million in various accounts. My house in Maple Ridge, which I built with my late wife 40 years ago, was worth another $1.2 million. I owned a cabin on Lake Superior that my father had left me, worth about $800,000. And I had been generous with that money. Perhaps too generous. When Michael married Denise 15 years ago, I gave them $250,000 as a wedding gift. I wanted them to start their life without financial stress. When they wanted to buy their house in Edina, I provided the $300,000 down payment. When my grandson Tyler was born, I set up a trust fund with $500,000. When my granddaughter Emma came along 2 years later, I did the same. I paid for Tyler's private school tuition, $12,000 a year for the past 6 years. I bought Denise a car when hers broke down. I funded Michael's failed restaurant venture to the tune of $180,000. When that collapsed, I never asked for a penny back. I did all of this because I believed in family. Because I thought blood meant something. Because I wanted my son to have an easier life than I did. And this is how he repaid me. The petition includes statements from 3 witnesses, Frank continued. One is a neighbor who claims you've been confused about what day it is. Another is someone named Patricia Novak. Do you know her? She's Denise's sister, I said, my jaw tightening. I thought so. The third statement is from a Dr. Harold Chen. He claims to have evaluated you informally and noticed signs of cognitive impairment. I've never met anyone named Harold Chen in my life. I suspected as much. Walter, this is a coordinated attack. They've been building a case against you, and they've been doing it quietly. If my colleague hadn't happened to mention it to me, you wouldn't have known until the sheriff showed up at your door. I sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the broken coffee cup on the floor. Brown liquid seeped across the white tiles like blood spreading from a wound. What do we do? I finally asked. First, we fight. And we fight hard. I'm going to need you to get a comprehensive cognitive evaluation from an independent neurologist, someone with impeccable credentials who has no connection to either of us. We need documentation that proves beyond any doubt that your mind is sharp. And then we show the court exactly what Michael and Denise are really after. This isn't about protecting you, Walter. This is about your money, and I intend to prove it. The next 3 weeks were the most difficult of my life. More difficult than losing my wife to cancer. More difficult than the malpractice suit I faced 20 years ago, which was ultimately dismissed. More difficult than anything I had ever experienced in my 72 years on this earth. Because this wasn't just a legal battle. This was my own son trying to erase me, to reduce me to nothing, to take everything I had built and claim it as his own. I underwent a full neuropsychological evaluation at the University of Minnesota. The testing took 2 days. Memory tests, reasoning tests, language tests. They scanned my brain. They analyzed my blood. They interviewed me for hours. The results came back exactly as I expected. My cognitive function was not just normal for my age, it was exceptional. The neurologist, Dr. Sarah Lindberg, wrote in her report that I demonstrated superior reasoning abilities and excellent memory retention. She noted that my test scores placed me in the 94th percentile for my age group. But Frank wanted more. He suggested something that felt like a betrayal of my own soul. But I agreed because I needed to know the truth. We need to find out what they've been saying about you, he said. And the only way to do that is to let them think they're winning. So I played along. The next time Michael called me, which was 4 days after I learned about the petition, I pretended I didn't know anything. He asked if I wanted to come over for Sunday dinner. His voice was cheerful, normal, as if he wasn't actively trying to destroy my life. That sounds wonderful, I said, keeping my voice steady. Should I bring anything? Just yourself, Dad. We miss you. When I hung up, I felt sick to my stomach. That Sunday, I drove to their house in Edina, the house I had helped them buy. I walked up the driveway, past the car I had purchased for Denise, and rang the doorbell. My grandson Tyler opened the door. He was 14 now, tall and lanky, with his mother's dark hair and his father's eyes. Grandpa, he hugged me, and for a moment, I forgot why I was there. This boy loved me. Whatever his parents were doing, Tyler was innocent. Dinner was roast chicken with mashed potatoes. Denise had made her famous apple pie for dessert. We sat around the table, and they asked me questions. How was I feeling? Was I sleeping well? Had I been confused about anything lately? I gave vague answers. I pretended to forget the name of a medication I was taking. I asked what day it was twice. I watched Denise exchange a knowing look with Michael. After dinner, Michael suggested we sit in the living room. The kids went upstairs to do homework. Denise brought out coffee, and then she said something that made my blood run cold. Walter, we've been worried about you. We think it might be time to talk about the future. What do you mean? I asked, playing my part. Well, Michael said, leaning forward, you're living alone in that big house. You're getting older. We just want to make sure you're taken care of. I take care of myself just fine. Of course you do, Dad. But what if something happened? What if you fell? What if you had a stroke in the middle of the night and no one was there? I looked at my son, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the teenager I had driven to football practice 3 times a week, the young man whose tuition I had paid without complaint. He was sitting across from me, wearing a concerned expression, pretending to care about my well-being while plotting to take everything I owned. What are you suggesting? I asked. We think you should consider moving in with us, Denise said. We have that guest room downstairs. You wouldn't have to climb stairs. I could cook for you. Michael could help manage your bills and appointments. Manage my bills? There it was. "I'll think about it," I said. "It's a lot to consider." Michael smiled. "Take your time, Dad. We're here for you." I left their house that night with a recording device in my pocket. Frank had given it to me. It was legal in Minnesota to record conversations you were a part of, and I had captured every word. But the real evidence came a week later. Tyler called me on a Wednesday afternoon. He sounded upset. "Grandpa, can I come over? I need to talk to you about something." When he arrived, his eyes were red. He had been crying. "What's wrong, son?" I asked, sitting him down in my living room. "I heard Mom and Dad talking last night. I wasn't supposed to, but I couldn't sleep, and I went downstairs to get some water. My heart began to race." "What did they say?" Tyler looked at me with tears streaming down his face. "They were talking about your house, about selling it. Mom said they could get at least $1 million for it and use the money to pay off their debts. Dad said they just needed the guardianship approved, and then they could sell everything. Your house, your cabin, everything." He was sobbing now. "Grandpa, are they trying to steal from you? Is that what's happening?" I pulled my grandson into my arms and held him tight. "Yes," I said quietly. "That's exactly what's happening." Tyler pulled back and looked at me. "We have to stop them. I'll tell the judge. I'll tell everyone what I heard." "You're a good boy, Tyler. But I need you to let me handle this. Can you do that?" He nodded. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to fight back." The guardianship hearing was scheduled for February 15th. By then, Frank and I had assembled a case that would have made any prosecutor proud. We had Dr. Lindbergh's comprehensive evaluation, proving my cognitive function was excellent. We had financial records showing every dollar I had given to Michael and Denise over the past 15 years, totaling over $1.4 million. We had the recording from Sunday dinner where they discussed managing my finances. We had statements from my neighbors, my doctor, my golf buddies, all testifying that I was sharp as a tack. But our most powerful piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. Dr. Harold Chen, the physician who had allegedly evaluated me and found signs of cognitive decline, had never actually met me. When Frank's investigator tracked him down, he admitted that Denise had paid him $5,000 to write the statement. He hadn't examined me. He hadn't even seen me in person. The whole thing was fabricated. He was willing to testify in exchange for immunity from prosecution. The morning of the hearing, I put on my best suit, the same suit I had worn to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Heart Association 3 years ago. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a 72-year-old man who had worked hard his entire life, who had loved his family unconditionally, and who was about to watch that family betray him in front of a judge. The courtroom was small and functional. Judge Patricia Holbrook presided. She was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I liked her immediately. Michael and Denise sat at one table with their attorney, a young man who looked nervous. I sat at the other table with Frank. The hearing began with Michael's attorney presenting their case. He talked about my age, my living situation, my concerning behavior. He submitted the fraudulent statements from the neighbor, from Patricia Novak, and from Dr. Chen. Then it was our turn. Frank stood up and methodically destroyed everything they had built. He presented Dr. Lindbergh's evaluation. He showed the judge my test scores, my brain scans, my blood work. He called Dr. Lindbergh to the stand, and she testified that I was one of the most cognitively healthy 72-year-olds she had ever examined. Then Frank presented the financial records. He showed how Michael and Denise had accumulated over $200,000 in debt. He showed the failed restaurant venture. He showed the credit card statements, the second mortgage on their house, the unpaid bills. "Your Honor," Frank said, "this petition is not about protecting Walter Harrison. It's about gaining access to his assets to pay off debts that Mr. and Mrs. Harrison have accumulated through their own financial mismanagement." Michael's face was turning red. Denise looked like she wanted to disappear, but Frank wasn't finished. He called Dr. Harold Chen to the stand. The man looked terrified. Under oath, he admitted everything. He had never met me. He had been paid $5,000 by Denise to write a false medical statement. He had committed fraud. The courtroom erupted. Judge Holbrook banged her gavel and demanded order. "Mr. Harrison, she said, addressing Michael. Do you have anything to say in response to these allegations? My son stood up. For a moment, he looked like the little boy I remembered, scared, vulnerable, lost. Dad, he said, turning to me, I'm sorry. I didn't. I never meant. Save it, I said quietly. Judge Holbrook's ruling was swift and decisive. She dismissed the guardianship petition in its entirety. She found that Michael and Denise had acted in bad faith and with fraudulent intent. She ordered them to pay my legal fees, which amounted to $47,000. She referred Dr. Chen to the medical board for disciplinary action, and she referred the case to the county prosecutor for potential criminal charges. Mr. Walter Harrison, she said, looking directly at me, you are a competent adult, fully capable of managing your own affairs. This court finds no evidence whatsoever of cognitive decline. On the contrary, the evidence suggests you are an exceptionally sharp individual who has been victimized by his own family's greed. She turned to Michael and Denise. What you attempted to do here today is despicable. You tried to steal from your own father. You committed fraud. You attempted to manipulate the legal system for personal financial gain. You should be ashamed of yourselves. As we left the courthouse, Frank patted me on the shoulder. It's over, Walter. You won. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like losing everything that mattered. That evening, I sat alone in my house, the house my wife and I had built together, the house where I had raised my son, the house Michael and Denise had planned to sell. My phone rang. It was Tyler. Grandpa? Are you okay? I'm okay, son. I'm so sorry about my parents. I didn't know they were like this. I'm ashamed to be their kid. Listen to me, Tyler. What your parents did has nothing to do with who you are. You're a good person. You told me the truth when it mattered. That took courage. Can I still come visit you? I don't care what they say. You're my grandpa, and I love you. I felt tears streaming down my face. Of course you can. I'll always be here for you. 2 months later, Michael and Denise pleaded guilty to attempted fraud. The prosecutor offered them a deal. No jail time, but they had to pay full restitution for my legal fees, complete 200 hours of community service each, and undergo mandatory financial counseling. They lost their house anyway. The debts caught up with them. Dr. Chen lost his medical license. As for me, I made some changes. I rewrote my will. Tyler and Emma would each receive their trust funds when they turned 25, but only if they completed college degrees. Michael was removed entirely. Everything else would go to the Mayo Clinic Foundation for cardiovascular research. I sold the cabin on Lake Superior. I used part of the money to set up a scholarship fund for medical students from low-income backgrounds. I called it the Margaret Harrison Scholarship, after my late wife. I kept the house in Maple Ridge. It holds too many memories to let go. Michael tried to call me a few times. I never answered. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. Some wounds don't heal. But here's what I've learned from all of this. Money reveals who people really are. It doesn't corrupt them. It just shows you the corruption that was always there, hidden beneath the surface. My son chose money over me. He chose greed over love. He chose to try to erase my mind rather than appreciate my heart. But I survived. I fought back. And I won. If you're watching this, and you're in a similar situation, let me give you some advice from someone who's been through it. First, get everything in writing. Every gift you give, every loan you make, document it. Create a paper trail. Second, establish a relationship with a good attorney before you need one. Frank Morrison saved my life. Having someone you trust in your corner makes all the difference. Third, consider setting up a trust for your assets now, while you're healthy and capable. Don't wait until your children start circling like vultures. Fourth, and this is the hardest one, don't let guilt cloud your judgment. I gave Michael everything because I felt guilty about his mother's death, about not being there enough when he was young, about working too much. That guilt made me blind to who he really was. And finally, know your own worth. I am 72 years old. I am sharp. I am capable. I am valuable. No one has the right to take that away from me, not even my own child. Last week, Tyler came over for dinner. He's 16 now. finishing his junior year of high school. He wants to be a doctor, like his grandfather. We sat at my kitchen table, eating pizza and talking about his future. He asked me about medical school, about what it takes to be a surgeon, about whether it's worth the sacrifice. I looked at this young man, this good person who came from bad people, and I felt hope. It's worth it, I told him. Anything worth doing requires sacrifice. But you have to do it for the right reasons. Not for money, not for status, but because you want to help people. Because you want to make a difference. He nodded, understanding. Thanks, Grandpa. For everything. Outside my window, the snow was falling again. Another Minnesota winter. Another chapter in a long life. I have lost my son. That wound will never fully heal. But I have kept my mind, my dignity, my home, and my grandchildren's love. And that is enough. That is more than enough.